What is going on, ladies and gentlemen of the Scribe Tribe, and welcome back to another SWGoH video. Today we are going to be doing a legendary tier list, all of these solo legendary characters. I'm not going to include Conquest characters or territory battles characters. This is simply by popping into the journey guide, checking out which legendary characters you can get, and I'm going to rank them using a tier maker. Let's do this. But just before we get into the video, guys, I would like to quickly change into a different top and talk to you about the sponsor of today's stream. Today's video is sponsored by Bloodline's Heroes of Lithas. This fantasy RPG takes a unique spin on the genre, and much like Dominic Toretto, this game is all about family. And just like my family, Bloodlines looks gorgeous. What are you waiting for? Head to the link in the description down below and download Bloodline's Heroes of Lithas for free and claim my very special starter pack. If Lord of the Rings and Pokemon had a love child game, that game would be Bloodline's Heroes of Lithas. You've got elves and demons, demigods and orcs and dragonborn and dwarves, all kinds of fantasy trope races, and you can now make happy little families with them and create your own unique lineage. Alright guys, this is how it works. Using the unique marriage system in this game, you can create 800 new hybrids. That means when a mammy elf and a daddy demon love each other very, very much, you can create unique offspring. And these offsprings will inherit the traits and talents of their families and pass it on for generations to come. And there's new characters coming into this game every single month, so the possibilities here are endless. And you're like Halloween, right? Well, on the 27th of this month, the brand new bloodline, the Accursed, a vampire clan, is joining the game. They are the darkest and most terrifying assassins yet to be found in the world of Lithas, an undead clan that rose alongside the Dark Elves from the ashes of their homeland's cataclysm. These Wraith Lords were cursed by the dark ritual that has given them an insatiable thirst for blood. Not only can these vampires deal significant area of effect damage, they also have the capabilities of sustaining themselves in longer fights. Starting on October 27th, the brand new event will allow you to earn your very first vampire. So what are you waiting for, guys? Use the link in the description down below or scan my QR code and download Bloodline's Heroes of Lithas for free. You will get 10 energy potions as part of my starter pack, alongside 100,000 crystals, 100 diamonds, and on October 27th, when the new event drops, you will get yourself a free vampire character. Beautiful. So download Bloodline's Heroes of Lithas now. Alrighty, and here we are on the tier maker. So I'm going to be doing this through an alphabetical order here. Like I said, all of the characters from the solo journey are going to be ranked by me, myself and I. Okay, so let's start off. We've got none other than the highly debated Beskar Mando. Now, when this guy first hit the holotables, people were, shall we say, less than impressed, because he just didn't seem to really have that much use, didn't really seem to have that much viability. There were some positive sides to him, though. He was actually a relatively easy character to unlock, still remains to be very easy to this day. I think you only need about Gear 8 characters, really, to unlock this character. Cara Dune, IG, Queel, good characters, really, in truth be told. And when he hit the holotables, he was available immediately. Straight away, you could unlock him no matter what. That gets a positive thumbs up from me. His value has changed over the years. Mostly because he now has viability. He is part of one of the meta fleets, he is part of the Executor fleet, and is a key pivotal ship in that particular lineup. He also now has a lot more viability with the introduction of additional scoundrels, the likes of Dash Rendar. The flexibility this character gives does place him a little bit higher than his first initial estimate. Would I say he is a top tier legendary character? Not necessarily. And let's qualify this by saying as well that when I'm talking about these tier lists here, I'm not including the use of datacrons, simply because that's not going to stand the test of time. Datacrons are a temporary thing. Yes, he has a very good datacron, but it is about to expire. I think looking at these kind of characters in isolation, without the use of datacrons, I would probably throw Beskar Mando into the B tier ranking. He does have a lot of viability. He is useful in areas such as territory battles. He has a lot of use in Grand Arena. He has a lot of use in Fleet Arena, and therefore territory wars as well. Yes, he has got a certain number of counters that help with GLs, for example. He can help take out the likes of Lord Vader under Fennec, and he can actually, with his current Datacron set, I know that's not really applying here, but with the increased damage on Whistling Birds, he can take out basically any GL. I still think B tier ranking for him is relatively good, because he is a good standalone character. He has good use across many game modes. Okay, moving on, we've got our boy BB-8, the little ball himself. Now, on a cuteness scale, I've got to give him a solid 11 out of 10, because look at him, he's a tiny rolling ball. What's not to like there? I know people like to hate on the sequel trilogy as much as they possibly can, but BB-8 is a standout character for me. Love him very much. Use in the game. I would say his use has diminished somewhat over the years. Obviously, during the JTR meta, very, very powerful, elevated her character to be definitely next level at that time. However, times have moved on, kits have become far more mature. That's an interesting word for power creep, right? Kits have matured. He just doesn't have the same place in the meta anymore. That being said, he does still have some use, namely throwing him in a GG team helps him take out the likes of Starkiller, helps him take out the likes of JML, for example, although really you're probably better off with Newt in that respect. I think he offers value, but I think it is very niche at this point. He does have a few useful things, such as Tenacity down on a basic, Illuminated Destiny is useful, and his secret intel buff does provide additional potency to those people that need it. Raids, again, he has a limited amount of use these days. Not a terrible character, and on the plus side, his unlock requirements are very, very easy at this point. You can do it with trash tier First Order, like I've still got. Okay. With that in mind, I'll probably throw BB-8 into the C tier. He's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. He just doesn't really have that oomph as a standalone legendary character. Next up on the list for us, our boy C-3PO, the protocol droid extraordinaire. When this character was first introduced, incredibly useful. So very useful. It was the first instance of us getting that translation buff, which is still viable today. We've since had it in other characters, such as the new 000, such as Tech, I want to say, from the Bad Batch. Very, very useful. Useful in raids. Elevates CLS damage output by throwing out those exposes. Has a bit of unique synergy with R2-D2. I like it. Bit of kit nuance like that is good. Is he is very much the epitome of a support character. You're not going to go in with a solo C-3PO and win anything, obviously. That being said, I think when he is in a team, it provides a high level of support, a high level of ability to punch up. Throwing him in a CLS team really elevates that team. With that in mind, I would say he's probably low tier on the B or a high C tier. Uncertain where I'd place him just now. It might evolve as we build out this list. Next up is going to be our boy Chewie. Chewie, fantastic unit, and was probably one of the very first legendary events that really made people pull out their hair. Combination with C-3PO here. Unlock requirements there, god awful. Nobody wants to be wasting away against those Ewoks. With those... Yeah. I know what I mean. Using those Ewoks to try and get C-3PO was a royal pain. Similarly speaking, the Chewie event when it first came out, before we had the likes of Django, before we even had relic levels, that Chewbacca event was a nightmare. However, times have moved on and that event is incredibly easy to unlock now, especially with all the additional bounty hunters that we've got with the likes of Mandalorian coming in with a Disintegrate, Grief, Bosk, Zetas, Relics. It all has become so much easier. CLS, again. CLS without Chewie is not exactly the same beast. Chewie gives so much to that team. The addition of his guard on Han Solo and the weaker supporting ally does mean you can't get crit, you can't get dazed, that sort of thing. It is a fantastic buff, and he's got good damage output and a lot of assists. I would say fantastic unit. Again, I would probably throw him in the B tier, and I'd probably throw him... I'd actually put him behind C-3PO, and the only reason I'll put him behind C-3PO is that C-3PO has a lot more synergy, because C-3PO has basically every tag, faction tag in the game. I'm obviously exaggerating a bit here, but C-3PO can work in a Resistance squad, C-3PO can work in a Rebel squad, C-3PO can work wherever he wants. Galactic Republic, the whole works. He has viability no matter where you put him, and even works a little bit as a plug-and-play character in certain situations. Chewbacca, not quite as much. However, obviously on an offensive basis, Chewie does a lot more damage. Next up, we've got the Chimaera. The only thing to go in the D tier list... Okay, no, I'm joking here, guys. The Chimaera doesn't necessarily belong in the D tier list. It's gaining a little bit of a resurgence at this point. The inclusion of additional Empire-based fleets now. We've got the likes of the TIE Iron Interceptor dropped into the game. We've got the Scythe coming into the game. I know they don't have direct synergy with the Chimaera, but the Empire fleet is actually starting to improve. With the likes of the Executor taking away all the bounty hunters, it's actually leaving all of the Empire ships on the table. Empire now can really punch up. We can see them beating Negotiators, we can see them beating Malevolence, we can even see them beating Profundity. Does the Chimaera really feature there? Perhaps not so much. Because quite often the Executrix is the fleet of choice, but on a defensive basis in GAC, the Chimaera does offer at least almost guaranteed drop banners because it can instant kill a unit. Will it get a hold? Perhaps not. Still useful, but I wouldn't call it a top tier unit. I'm going to throw it in for C for now, simply because there are so many better choices when it comes to fleet commanders. Next up, our boy, Commander Luke Skywalker. He is the evergreen legendary, if you ask me. He has had viability from the day he's introduced. He was able to solo the Rancor when he first came, and throughout the years, he has had the inclusion of brand new Rebel units that have constantly kept him, whilst not at the top of the meta, but at least viable. You had the introduction of Chewbacca, you had the introduction of C-3PO, then you had Chewie and C-3PO. I mean, we've got 2 units 3 times. It's amazing. But what those units brought to the table under CLS was viability. He can take out great B tier units, A tier teams, that sort of thing on the same level. He's able to take out Jedi Knight Revans, he's able to take Darth Revans, he's able to take out Gas. All of these sort of mid-game meta teams, he still has viability there. And I think that's fantastic. So he's going to be our first character that we're going to place in the A tier team. Also, side note, CLS is a standalone unit, fantastic. In a one-on-one situation, he has got so much longevity and damage output that he can basically beat any non-GL character. Next up, we've got our boy Darth Revan. This is where kits had just started to get a little bit out of control. With the advent of Jedi Knight Revan, we had a veritable library of information going into these characters. There was so much to read, so much to understand just to get the nuance of the kit. Darth Revan very much followed in that vein, but also decides to look like a badass in a dark Sith suit. I don't think anybody can debate this. He is a fantastic character. I'm going to throw him up here in the A tier, and I'm probably actually going to put him ahead of CLS in overall viability. Darth Revan has had the inclusion of Malgus recently as a Sith Empire tag, works with or without Malgus, and they are able to take out such good teams. The fear mechanic is fantastic, the ferocity mechanic really outputs additional strength, and his base stats are out of this world. Fantastic character from a great era, great game. I love Darth Revan. What can I say? I think he's a top tier unit. Unlock requirements, not terrible. The event itself is able to be done with more or less only investment in Bastila and HK. The rest of it you can actually get away with very, very low gear characters. So that makes it an extra bonus in my books. I will give the caveat for that though, that Malak is a bit of an additional requirement for a Darth Revan team. You really do need Malak in a team to really get it to shine, and Malak's requirements are a little bit more stringent. We'll get to that in a moment. Next up, we've got our boy Palpatine, not the galactic legend. We are talking about the original gangster Palpatine. I want to say he was the very first legendary, might be the second after Grandmaster Yoda. I can't remember which came first. But still, much like Commander Luke Skywalker, Emperor Palpatine has had viability for a long time. Perhaps not as the top of the meta, but there was always a place for him with the introduction of Mara Jade, the kit reworks for the likes of Vader, you've got Piet and stuff like that. This guy has always had a certain level of viability, and I love him for that. Being one of the very first galactic legends, his Unlock requirements are incredibly easy. All we need to do is have Rebels. Any Rebels at 7-star, and you could probably do it with Gear 7 characters. Very, very easy unlock, lots of viability. He has got, under the current Datacron set, you've got the ridiculous Tarkin cheese and the ridiculous Vader cheese. Doesn't necessarily need Palpatine lead for that, but he has that viability. I know it's temporary, but there are always stuff like that you can do. TM manipulation, control, throwing him in under a Starkiller team. You know, a lot of viability there. Big, big love for him. Him as an individual unit, though, I'm not sure if he really is the powerhouse. It's more just the combination of teams, of units that make up his team that make it overall good. So I want to say that he is probably a B tier character, and I would probably place him at the top of our B tier list just for now. Particularly because of the Starkiller element. It's really Starkiller that makes that team, but he plays a pivotal role in it. Next up, we've got our boy, the Profundity, and it's all the way up at S tier. That's not the Profundity, that's the Executor. The Executor, for me, is S tier. The reason I would rank him as an S tier ahead of the likes of Darth Revan and CLS is because fleet is incredibly important. And because there's such a smaller pool of fleets compared to characters, it's quite easier to distinguish power levels, in my opinion. Now, until the likes of the Profundity came around, reliable counters to the Executor were incredibly hard to come by. You would either have to go in and burn a fleet to waste the cooldowns, or you'd have to get lucky with a bit of RNG, particularly after the increased buffs to the AI and the changes in how the kit works. Once they sort of honed the Executor's kit in, he was incredibly annoying to beat. Even in mirror matches, incredibly annoying. We all know fleet is where we get a large portion of our crystal displacement. I can English. Distribution. So it really puts the importance on fleet. It also can very much decide Grand Arena battles for the longest time before Profundity came out. The deciding factor for a lot of people's GAC was, how did the Executor match go? Did your RNG favor you? Did you hold it for defense? Did you win it on offense? It is a pivotal character. Slightly less so now with the introduction of the Profundity and more reliable off-meta counters that have been made for it. But I still maintain, in this legendary list, for this type of unit, I would say he is an S tier ship. Next up, we got our boy Gas. I might get a little bit of hate for this, but I'm throwing Gas all the way up there in S tier. And I'll tell you why. Yes, Gas is able to be countered by quite a lot of these A tier teams down here. Darth Revan and CLS can both take out a Gas 501st team. However, Gas has viability where they do not, and in that respect, I think he deserves to be ranked higher. Gas is able to take out GL Rey, is probably a very solid counter at this point to Rey with Ben Solo, the latest Conquest unit, simply because his leadership will stop revives. That gives him such a large amount of viability, and it is relatively reliable against GL Rey. Not only that, he is incredibly dependable when it comes to the light side GOTB. That remains to be seen whether or not he will maintain that viability going into the new TB, but I would be willing to bet that he does maintain that viability simply because of how his kit works. So right now I would rank him as S tier because he's great in GAC, both offensively and defensively, great in territory wars, defensively, great in territory battles. His requirements as well, getting to his event and beating his event might be difficult, but all of the units that you gear up for his event, generally speaking, are very good units. So it is a good investment for your overall roster. Not only that, outside of Gas 501st, he has got viability under other Jedi leaderships. Jedi Knight Revan leadership, Jedi Knight Luke leadership, JML, JMK. All of them can benefit from throwing Gas in there. That sort of flexibility is incredible. Top tier unit in my opinion. Next up, the Grand Inquisitor. Do we have an F scale? No, D. I jest, guys. I jest. The Grand Inquisitor. I know community sentiment around the Inquisitorius as a faction is rock bottom, and I think CG only have themselves to blame for that. It is not that the character is actually terrible, the character is actually good. Good. The Inquisitorius faction is good. I'm only joking, guys. I'm only joking. Grand Inquisitor is actually a good character, does have a lot of viability, okay? Currently, if we're looking outside of the new set of Datacron Set 5 that's coming out, that's really going to boost Jabba and the Hutt Cartel as a faction, Grand Inquisitor and his Inquisitorius allies are actually probably the best, most reliable counter to Jabba the Hutt outside of other GLs. I know that's a niche use, but that's still useful. In territory wars, he is good at beating a lot of units. He still has viability in countering these other units, such as he can take out gas teams, you know? As long as you dial in the mods and you actually put some investment into it, he becomes more useful. As you saw in my previous video, link over there, go check it out. The Scythe is the next unit coming out for Conquest, and it looks to be an incredible, incredible ship. He is the pilot alongside Fifth Brother, one of the requirements for his legendary unlock. So we are going to see additional importance placed on this character. We know the upcoming TB, the unlock character for that, much like Ki-Adi-Mundi and much like Wat Tambor, is going to be Reva, who is probably going to be another Inquisitorius. I don't think we'll see the sort of Reva at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi that we get. So the importance of the faction is going to be elevated again. I'm sure she is going to be powerful. And I know that's a long timeline before anybody actually unlocks her, but can't be understated, guys. The Inquisitorius are still a very important faction into the game, only growing in importance, and I don't think that's ever going to leave. So, with that in mind, I'm throwing Grand Inquisitor up in A. I know, a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I do think that the Inquisitorius is a largely misrepresented faction. Yes, perhaps they're not that enjoyable and they have been rammed down our throats, but if we take a pragmatic approach and we just look at what it can counter and what importance it has for the rest of the game and the value it brings to your roster, increased use of the TIE Iron Interceptor, Second Sister's ship, because she's an R5 requirement. That's going to boost your Empire fleets. That helps you win GACs. We've got an assault battle that comes, like once a month, I believe. That particularly pertains to Inquisitorius. That is additional relic materials, additional Zeta mats. That is additional Chirotech. On a frequent basis, guys. Over time, it is a worthwhile investment. Like I said, probably going to be pivotal in the new TB as well. Moving on, our boy Grandmaster Yoda. Oh, GMY. Now, as I said earlier today, I don't know if he was the very first legendary event or Palpatine was. Can't remember. One or the other. Either way, unlock requirements, ridiculous. So easy. All you need is 5 Jedi characters at 7-star. They probably don't even have to be level 85. It is that easy, the event is. You could go in there with your worst Jedi and probably still unlock him. The value that he brings to teams now, I want to say, is unfortunately a bit diminished from what he used to be. Grandmaster Yoda used to be the staple Jedi character, the one that dishes the damage. With the inclusion of new Jedi into the game, the likes of Ki-Adi-Mundi, the likes of Jedi Knight Luke, the likes of Gas, I don't want to say his impact is diminished, but it's just not the same. You know, he's got a solid kit, he's got a couple of specials, he hits hard, he is able to generate a lot of TM, but in this day and age, he's just not as powerful as he used to be. That being said, he is far from trash, and I'm still going to put him as a B tier character because he does have a lot of flexibility. He's a Jedi, which is a fantastic faction, lots of different teams that he can jump into. He is also Galactic Republic, so he can fit in other areas. He can fit under a Padme lead, he can fit under Jedi Knight Revan, he can go into JML, he can go into JMK, although some of his kit is nullified by JMK's leadership. That flexibility is good. It's just, I think the shine is starting to wear off the apple for Yoda. Next up, our boy, Jedi Knight Luke. Jedi Knight Luke, fantastic character. A long-awaited, possibly one of the most longest-awaited characters in this game. Everybody was looking for Jedi Knight Luke, the proper Jedi, because CLS over here, he's not a Jedi yet. Jedi Knight Luke came into the game, and people were disappointed that he wasn't a galactic legend. That's okay, not everybody can be a galactic legend. He gets one later on in the likes of Jedi Master Luke. Now, Jedi Knight Luke, fantastic character. Hits like an absolute truck. Very, very interesting, unique leadership that people don't see quite as often anymore, simply because there are so many good Jedi leaders at this point. But his viability is never to be understated. He is used in off-counter metas to GLs. I've seen Jedi Knight Revan with Jedi Knight Luke take out the likes of Rey with Ben Solo. The same team can take out Slacker, for example. He's a great character. Great unit. Absolute benefit to anybody's roster that can have, and is still fantastic in Lightside GOTB. His leadership is able to slow down the entire enemy team, and we can circumvent their, quite frankly, ridiculous base speeds and stats like that. Where would I place him? Ooh, this is tricky. I'm umming and ahhing, and I'm not sure. I want to say I'm going to put him up at S tier. No. I'm going to have him leading the pack at A tier. I don't quite think he's quite S tier. I think he's fantastic, but not quite as got that universal use as Gas does. Nonetheless, I think he is a top tier unit. Top of the A tier for me on that one. Jedi Knight Revan, the OG Jedi Knight Revan with the library of textbooks that you need to read to understand his kit. Fantastic character. He was so meta-defining that they had to introduce Jedi that had specific anti-synergy with Jedi Knight Revan. The likes of Jedi Knight Luke's leadership will not benefit from Old Republic Jedi, for example. Yeah, he is so good and has maintained that relevance. When he first came to the game, he dominated Squad Arena meta. If you didn't have Jedi Knight Revan, you were basically out of luck. You were not climbing any further. You could not beat other Jedi Knight Revans. I mean, you could, but it was incredibly rare to do so. And because his kit is so strong, you will continue to see him in more or less any Jedi meta team that comes to the fray. You know, you see him under the likes of JML, you see him under the likes of JKL, you see him everywhere. His marked ability is fantastic. So much sustain, so much damage. Fantastic character, great in TB. That savior mechanic adds another layer of complexity to this kit and additional survivability. I love it. I'm going to throw Jedi Knight Revan up. I'm going to place him higher importance than Darth Revan. I think Darth Revan as a character has more oomph, more power, but Jedi Knight Revan has got more universal use throughout the Jedi faction compared to Darth Revan and the Sith faction. Okay, I feel like Jedi Knight Revan can slot into more places than Darth Revan can, and I think that gives him overall better usability. Our girl JTR, she can go to the top of the C tier list. Don't get me wrong, guys. JTR is actually fantastic. She is a really good character. I just think in the context of this ranking, she is not quite there as powerful as the other characters at this time. Yes, she used to lead her faction, the Resistance faction, with BB-8 and R2-D2, for example. And even if you throw C-3PO in there, that's a fantastic team. But these days, that team doesn't quite cut it. Even if you start throwing in the Bag Bros, yes, they can beat some good teams. But it just feels at this point that it's just too expensive. I think she causes some issues, but I might throw her up to the bottom of B tier. Just because she does have some viability, she does add an additional layer of defense when it comes to GL Rey as well. The ability to cleanse all those debuffs and interrupt some of the Datacron issues that we're getting at the moment. I'll say bottom of B tier. A shadow of a former self, but still a useful character and worth getting. Malak, we're throwing him all the way up in S tier. Some people might not quite agree with my assertions on this one, but I feel like Malak is a character that elevates his faction to an entirely different level. Darth Revan with Malak is a different beast to Darth Revan without Malak. Not only that, Malak can be slotted into any team, and it improves the team generally speaking. His fear mechanic that is reactive based on if you crit him or if you dot him has got so many levels of uses. He takes reduced damage from percentage health effects, which means you can't life drain him, you can't kill him with dots, you can't kill him with exposes, and even if you do land those, you're just going to get feared, which is one of the best debuffs in the game. He has got his own life drain, which increases his own stats, and is more or less a death sentence for anybody that doesn't have any protection. Obviously, there are some exclusions, but yeah, fantastic character, can solo a bunch of teams, very useful in TB, very useful in basically any game mode apart from Fleet. And I think the reasons for that are obvious for now. Wait until we get, the Starforge or something as a capital ship. Fantastic character. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. The next unit that we're going to look at is Han's Millennium Falcon. Now, for the longest time, Han's Millennium Falcon was, I would say, the second best ship in the game. The only thing that I would say is a better ship than Han's Millennium Falcon is the Houndstooth, because I don't know what the game designer was on when they designed the Houndstooth, but they ruined tanks for fleets forever. There is no more annoying tank than Houndstooth in this game. Houndstooth is the Nest of fleets, and if Nest was 10 times more annoying than she currently is. However, Han's Millennium Falcon, when it came in, dominated the meta, introduced a lot of power, a lot of assists, a lot of damage to a fleet that basically had none. It completely revitalized an entire fleet under Home 1, and we're seeing a resurgence of use with the likes of the Profundity. Great ship, very, very powerful, good sustainability, good assists, good damage, love it. In the fleet meta, I would say it's probably an A tier. We probably could have separated fleets out of this, but hey, that's where I'm going with it. Yeah, great. Dispel on a basic and everything like that, fantastic. Obviously, some of its use under the Profundity gets a little bit limited because he misses out on that TM benefit, but still, overall, fantastic, fantastic ship. Definitely worth getting. Next up, we've got Padme, or Sadme, however you want to call her. This is tricky. This is tricky because Padme, her viability has just been gutted, unfortunately. When she first came out, she was actually great. It was a really interesting part of the meta way back when we had the likes of Jedi Knight Revan and Darth Revan, and we had CLS, and we had Gas, and we had Padme. That viability that they all had, that sort of flexibility, that flavor of the game, was a really good error, if you ask me, because there are so many teams that could kill each other. It was an interesting part of Squad Arena and Territory War where you could just mix and match and make everything work. And I felt like they tried to replicate that with Galactic Legends, but because of the extreme power leap that Galactic Legends brought, invariably people found teams and combos and now datacrons that make one particular Galactic Legend far superior to another one. Or we had Cat come in with JMK and just completely dominate. These days, Cat's key characters all get stripped away to other teams. It's the harsh truth of the matter. Galactic Republic is a really good faction, but she's not going to have the use of Snips anymore, because Snips will go towards a JMK team because she is so viable under that team. She's not really going to have General Kenobi anymore because he's going to be under a JMK team. Grandmaster Yoda typically would go with a bunch of Jedi. So what is she left with? She's left with Bad Batch that have their own team, some substandard clones. She could use the likes of R2-D2 and C-3PO maybe, but then it just kind of lacks the oomph. She does have a lot of viability. She does have a lot of flexibility, and she can be dropped into a lot of teams, like she does feature in a JMK team. But I think it's more as a filler unit rather than a key role within that team. I'm going to find it difficult to find a place for Padme, but I think if we put JTR at the bottom of the B tier, I would have to place Padme probably just a hair better, just because you can get use out of her. If you do have Cat and you don't have JMK, Cat under Padme with JKA is actually a very, very solid team. You can kill JMK Cat with Padme Cat. That gives it viability. But I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, when you have all these Galactic Legends, that Padme just her use really peters off in my experience. I would very much like to see some additional Galactic Republic units specifically designed to work under Padme. I would love to see that happen. But until it does happen, I don't feel like I can really elevate her higher on this tier list right now. Alright, so next up we have got the Profundity. You go higher than that. So the Profundity is going to sit at the top of my S tier list right now, simply because it kills everything. The level of RNG in a Profundity team is not non-existent, but it's so low that it should almost not matter. Not only does it beat every single fleet in the game, it does so with fantastic banners. You can see Profundity's 2-manning Executors, R9 Executors getting taken out by just the Profundity, Hans Millennium Falcon, and the Outrider for like max banners. There isn't another fleet in the game that can take out that high level of a fleet with that much efficiency, and it can do that to any fleet. That in itself warrants it an S tier, in my opinion. Similarly, you take this in Lightside GOTB, and you win the special mission or the combat mission that you happen to be in. It is that good, it is that dependable, it is that reliable, and it will secure you 400 crystals a day in fleet, provided your fleet arena shard is not absolutely crazy full of sweats. I don't know how else I can put this. It's just the best capital ship in the game. Yes, it can be countered, but it just handles everything without stress, with ease. And the requirements for it, whilst extremely high, you know, it's the only legendary character in the game that has an R9 requirement so far. At least it gives you a pretty decent team with Admiral Radus. You would only have to gear up one more character, and I would recommend either K2SO or Scarith Rebel Pathfinder for that role, for it to become a very solid team. Nothing more to really say about this. Fantastic unit. Next up, our boy R2-D2, another fantastic legendary unit that has had its use unfortunately cut short over the longer term. R2-D2 does give a lot to a team, but unfortunately the CLS team, which it used to be its home, has had its team filled out with the likes of Chewie and C-3PO. That offers so much more damage to the CLS team, it doesn't really need R2-D2. These days, the benefit of R2-D2 I find is more to be used with JTR. JTR with BB-8 and R2-D2, potentially even throw in C-3PO if you have it to spare, is a pretty good team. They've got a lot of speed, a lot of control, a lot of stat sharing. It's good, it's just not great anymore. That's the only problem with it. I do very much like R2-D2, particularly in 3v3. JTR with BB-8 and R2-D2 is a really good offensive team, causes a lot of issues and can take out some good squads, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just not what it used to be. So I'm going to put him slightly higher than BB-8. Oh, do I want to put him slightly higher than BB-8? No, I don't. I think BB-8's stat boost, speed boost at the start of battle offers more viability to more teams. Okay, Starkiller then. Our boy Starkiller, he is definitely going up into the S tier for me. I would probably place him just above Grand Inquisitor for now. Why is Starkiller so good? Counters GLs. Moving on. No, not moving on. Starkiller, apart from being an iconic character in the Star Wars universe and one that fans wanted to see for a very, very long time, he has still got incredible viability in Grand Arena and in Territory War. This is because he's got rather unique interactions with how his unique works. He needs to have a smattering of units, so he needs one Sith, and he needs dark side unaligned Force user, and he needs light side unaligned Force user, and he needs a tank, potentially a Jedi tank, preferably. But the stat boost that he offers, particularly when his Omicrons are active, means that this guy, it just becomes either a nightmare on defense or can go out and start tackling GLs on offense. Pulling down the Star Destroyer out of the sky is still one of the coolest animations in the entire game and is incredibly powerful. Love him. Apart from that, the unlock requirements for getting Starkiller are, yes, they are up there with 5R5 requirements. It's pretty steep. However, each and every one of those units are fantastic. You've got the likes of Kyle Katarn that massively elevates a Mon Mothma team. Also, if you have Kyle Katarn's TB Omicron, massively makes life easier for any Jedi team that you put him in. You've got the likes of Darth Talon, who is a staple basically in meta Sith teams, either under Sith Eternal or under Malgus or basically anywhere that you want to put her, she becomes a level of annoyance that is just tricky to deal with. Offering additional speed, offering additional survivor mechanics, she's great. Who else have we got? Dash Rendar, out of this world, fantastic scoundrel, especially with the current Datacron sets. Even without the Datacron sets, he is very, very useful as a defensive team in TW and in GAC, so I would never knock that. He is also the pilot of the Outrider, which is part of the best meta fleet in the game with the Profundity. So already we're seeing how is this all working out. Yeah, so the requirements for Starkiller are all fantastic. You've got Mara Jade as well, completely elevating Palpatine teams to ungodly new heights, and even works with Starkiller himself. So I've got no complaints about the requirements for Starkiller. Last up, Grand Admiral Thrawn, also the pilot of the capital ship, the Chimaera. One of the earlier events, very, very easy to unlock. All you need to have is Phoenix. The only reason people struggle to unlock Thrawn at 7 stars is because most people try to go in with Gear 8, Gear 9 Phoenix, and that understandably is a little bit difficult. He is an evergreen kit and possibly one of the greatest plug-and-play characters that exist in the game. The fact that he can turn meter swap is a rare and powerful ability, also includes some protection recovery, also dispels all debuffs on the targeted ally, and it can be done on anyone. I believe every other turn meter swap ability in the game has got some restrictions around who it can turn meter swap with, like Cat can only do Galactic Republic, Jedi Knight Revan can only do other Jedi, I want to say it's Hunter can only do other Bad Batch units, so it's like, it's a very limited amount of players that can actually do that. Also, Fracture is one of the best debuffs in the game. I would probably call it the best debuff in the game if it wasn't for the fact that it got nerfed and now no longer works the same way against Galactic Legends. However, Thrawn, still incredibly useful. His kit is incredibly nuanced, incredibly powerful, and has viability throughout the entirety of the game. I'm going to place Thrawn all the way up in A tier, probably a little bit leaning towards the bottom of it at this point, but still incredibly useful as a plug-and-play character and easy to unlock. And I think, guys, that is going to be about it for this particular tier list. This was a lot of fun. I have not done any tier list videos before. If you want to use your own rankings and show me how you would rank these legendary characters, I'll put a link to this tier list creator in the description down below. But hey, guys, do leave me a like. Do consider subscribing to me. God, I can speak. Do consider subscribing to me, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.
Just giving a quick shout out to my patrons. I appreciate each and every single one of you, and without your support, I wouldn't be doing this today. Thanks so much.